kids, my two children. I've got two children, they're adults. One of which is a parent herself, right? They went through the Steiner school system, you know, and it was very. It was a great idea, but you know, in so many ways, it was very kind of like not validating of particularly my son's physicality and his masculinity. You know, it just wasn't. You know, like they didn't encourage that, they didn't support that, they wouldn't validate that, and in the end, he was sinking because you know he needed to be a different person. He was a different person, and you know, he had to move school as a result. You know, and I think that's problematic.
Yeah,
it's really problematic. You know, if you know, I'm a physical guy too. You know, and I enjoy that. It's non-violent. You know, doesn't mean it's not combative and competitive. You know, there's another. You know, like Steiner School. My experience was very we don't want to compete. We're not competing. We're just loving each other, right? You know, I'm being overly simplistic, and I don't mean to be disrespectful because it was a wonderful education, but but there was a tone coming through there about that. You know.
Yeah.
And you know, my son, big guy, big physical guy, he wanted to play rugby union, Peter. You know.
Yes.
And out of nowhere.
Yeah, and so I think there is an issue about, well, what is masculinity and heterosexual masculinity and masculinity performed by men and masculinity performed by women as well. There are all different kinds of formations about how that is, and the sense that, I guess you're, you know, coming around to this sort of suggestion that there's some shaming around masculinity, as there's definitely a trivialization around femininity as well. And so there's sort of, you know, there are very strict kind of conventions, social conventions for both performances of gender. I don't know if that's too much of an academic sounding, but yeah, these are, I guess, undercurrents that are bubbling up in us when we kind of come to these debates about men's violence against women, because it's not the fact that our kids aren't allowed. Well, are you saying that it's maybe because our kids aren't allowed to be masculine at school?
No, I think you know, boys need to. I mean, we're starting Fight Club on Saturday, right? And I'm really.
And girls would also be included in that.
Of course they would be. But, you know, we've got a boy who needs to go to Fight Club, you know, and I think we've both agreed with that, and we've been talking about it for a while, and it's about to happen, right?
But that's also because he's not a sporty boy, you know.
Well, he's a physical boy, though.
I know, he's exactly. You know? But I think that's sort of, you know, it's not to, I feel like at school there are a lot of avenues or outlets for boys to play sport, but that's not what my kid is. But he still does need to have a physical expression. Yeah. Yeah, and girls would also need to do that, and girls do a lot of physical activity as well. And so it's not saying, I guess what I'm trying to say, that I'm just not being exclusive. It's the thing about masculinity, but it does need to be, there's a part of the physicality of masculinity that needs to be respected, but that's not why we're saying, you know, how does that link to men's violence against women, do you think?
Well, because I think that there's, and I saw this when I did my youth work. I did youth work 20 years ago. I was a manager of a residential care facility. And
for how long?
3 years.
Wow.
And the senior management, I had a lot of conflict because there was this idea that with the boys, who are often, you know, they could be violent, right?
Yeah.
That we needed to kind of diminish all of that, you know, and I wanted to get them involved in boxing and sport and, you know, combat sport, you know, and that was my idea, because I thought, you know, and I had a worker working for me who was a martial arts expert, and he said, I'll straighten these guys out, you know, and I could feel that they needed that. They needed some boundary set around all of that emotion and all of that hormone and all of that trauma in many cases, you know, and it was just shut down by the organisation. They just simply wouldn't see that. And in the case of your son, I just wanted to acknowledge you because like you may have a response that's